Welcome back to the podcast. This is your girl, Leanne. I am so excited to have another powerful guest on the show today. We have Evelyn Morrison. She has a very inspiring story. Trigger warning, we are going to be talking about some heavy topics, but I just love being able to connect with people who want to talk about the dark shit, want to talk about the things that almost broke them, but they've been able to turn their pain into their power. And if you've been here for a while, you know how I do. So, Evelyn, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. And I truly admire the work that you've been doing, which is why I connected with you that day when I saw you in person for the first time. I was like, I got to introduce myself to this girl. One, I had to give you your flowers for the work that you were doing because I know you're big on giving everybody else their flowers. So I was like, I need to give this girl her flowers real quick because she's doing some really amazing work. And that your work has really inspired me to be here and show up today and share my story as well. Because for so long, I've kept it in. I've kept everything bottled in, and I've just found my own coping mechanisms for learning to work through my emotions. But now I'm at the stage in my life where I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm going to share my story. People are going to see what I've been through and really see me for me. And I'm just like, I'm all in for that experience. So thank you for having me.
Yes, claps, snaps, all of that to that. Thank you so much for seeing me, and everything you see in me, I see in you tenfold. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's start off with an intro for anyone who's meeting you for the first time, and then we'll get into your story a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Evelyn. Some people know me as Ev, like people from my hometown. A lot of people know me as Eve from my business. My family knows me as Evie. I'm a daughter. I'm a aunt. I'm a human. I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, friend, sister, cousin, nature lover, traveler, cat mom. I'm also a dancer. I'm a little retired, but I love the arts and everything in that field as well. So a little bit of everything.
I love that. She's a multifaceted bad bitch, as I like to call
Hey.
it. So you are a survivor of sexual abuse, and that's what we're going to be focusing on your conversation. And again, thank you so much for finding the strength within yourself to want to talk about this on a public platform. I know it's not easy. I commend you. And I would just love for you to start off with your upbringing, how that looked like for you growing up, and then what you experienced when you went through the sexual abuse.
Yeah. So, I mean, my upbringing was just complete chaos, like in good ways and in a lot of bad ways. I am one of six. So there was a lot of us in the house. Granted, like I come from a blended family. So there were three from my mom's side and then two brothers from my dad's side. And then they had me. So my brothers were with us every other weekend. My father was very involved. So it was always six of us in the house. And my dad was an immigrant father. So he was working 16 plus hours a day most of the time. And my mom always doing overtime. Like they were hustlers, hard workers. But with that being said, there weren't really parents in the house. It was my oldest sister, who I give all the flowers to as well. She really held it down, Jessica. She was our mom. She raised us, chores, keeping us out of trouble, breaking up fights in the house. Like it was just pure chaos. And it really made me an anxious kid. Like I hated everybody in my house. Like my house was like the house to go to on the block. Everybody knew our spot. My mom was also just like everybody's mom. Like everybody called her mom in the neighborhood. She was the one that people would run to when they were in trouble. They needed something. I mean, we would have people in and out of our house, shit getting stolen. Like nothing was ever yours. It was very overwhelming and chaotic, which turned into having anxiety. As a kid, like I remember I would like wake up and like sort of just like panic if my mom wasn't around. I think just being overstimulated the way I was constantly and never really feeling like I had my private space, because whether if it was my siblings in my room touching my stuff or if it was just guests over, it was a big family home. So we were on the first floor. My aunt and my uncle were on the second. My grandparents were on the third, which was dope in a lot of ways. As an adult, it didn't really serve me. A lot of that came back around. And now I'm like, I love my privacy. I love my peace. I love my space, because I really didn't feel like I had that growing up. You know, my parents did the best. They really did. Their main priority was just providing. And that was just financially, materially. And they didn't really have the emotional capacity to hold space for me the way that I needed someone to hold space during that time. And then, just because of all the chaos that was happening, a lot of things were happening that weren't being seen. And this is where the sexual abuse started for me. It's really close to home. I'm not going to name anybody. I'm not going to point out anybody because they're still very much a part of my life. And, just don't want to ruin anybody's image. But it was very close to home. It was in my home and it was happening. And I must have been, I think, like 7 years old when it started. And it was for a few years. Like, it was at least until I was like 9, 10 years old. And I didn't know anything was wrong. You're so young, you don't really understand what's right from wrong. You have this person who's supposed to be someone you can trust, someone who's supposed to love you, someone who's supposed to care for you because they're just that close to home. So you do that. And you don't question anything. You just think it's normal, but it's like, shh, don't tell anybody, like keep it hush hush, don't say anything. And so that's exactly what I did. All the way up until I think it was like late high school. I was having like a hard time just like mentally, I was just having like a lot of brain fog as a kid. I mean, I was really good in school. I was like an overachiever, but I was just having a really hard time, harder than usual. And all these memories just came flooding back to me. And maybe it was when I started dating, like really getting into a serious relationship, like it started triggering all these different emotions. And I literally, Leanne, was like, oh shit, I was sexually abused. It was just that crazy to the point that one, I didn't realize anything was wrong. And two, I just buried it so deep just to keep going. It got to the point where it was just like an outer body experience. Like I wasn't in my body anymore, which I still struggle with till this day. I have to constantly like get back in my body, feel, how am I feeling? Like just all these modalities to always just get back into my body because my natural state is to be out of it. And I'm like, okay, let's reel it back in. So yeah, that was my childhood. And then it wasn't until like high school, teenage years, right when I'm about to graduate, that everything came back up again.
I'm curious to know, did you ever tell anyone what was going on up until that point? Or was that like the starting point for you to be like, okay, this is something that I need to start dealing with. Let me tell someone, or how did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, even at that point, I hadn't opened up to anyone, not one single person. I mean, there's just so much that goes on in your head. Like, am I going to be judged? Like, why didn't I say anything? What they're going to think that I would like you go through this rabbit hole of thoughts. Then you're scared of what it's going to do to the other person. Like, my thing was always about the other person, how it's going to affect them. I mean, this person has a family, they have kids now. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine ruining somebody else's life, but that person almost ruined mine. And for so long, all I did was care about that, like just how this person would feel, how it would affect them. And it's like, and I just became that person, always worried, always so concerned about other people and how they would feel, and never fucking being there for myself, really having that like outer body experience, but really being like this super caregiver, like very nurturing. Like I've always been extremely sensitive, extremely empathetic. And I think it's because of what I've gone through that I've had to like process these things and like processing it on my own. It wasn't until I was a freshman in college and just everything was going wrong. Like there was just so many things that were happening in my life at this time.
That's usually how it goes, right? It's like one thing after another, and you reach that breaking point.
Yeah, literally. And thank God for my best friend, Melissa. Shout out to her. That's my ride or die right there. And she sat down with me and she was like, girl, you're not okay. You're not even talking to me. Like I had shut down so much at that point. Like I was just numb, like just riding the wave. And it was so overwhelming at that point. I didn't even know where to start. Like I was just trying to get through, just in my overachiever mode, outside of my body, all these coping mechanisms that I've learned. And she was like, listen, if you're not going to talk to me, like go to therapy. And I was like, okay.
And that was the start. I just want to say shout out to having people like that in your life. We all need a Melissa in our lives that even without you having to say something directly to her, she could just read your energy. And that started for you to be like, oh shit, this is bigger than I can handle on my own anymore. Let's start to address these wounds that have been following you since childhood, honestly, right? So shout out to the Melissas out there.
Shout out. I mean, that's it. If I always think back, like that was such a pivotal moment in my life. That's when the journey just started, like began for me. But if it wasn't for her just kind of like holding the mirror up for me at that moment in time, I don't know where I'd be. Like, I really don't know.
Mm. So let's transition into that. Now let's talk about how you have been able, and I know this is a lifelong journey. I will never say that someone is 100% healed from whatever it is that they've gone through because life be lifing, right? But how did it look like for you in the beginning in regards to healing from such a traumatic experience? And how did self care play a role in your overall wellness?
Yeah. So I started therapy, which at the time, it didn't really work out so well for me. I wasn't as receptive to the experience. My walls were really, they were strong and they were high. So
Which is understandable.
yeah, and I remember just walking in there and I would straight up tell her, like, I don't want to be here right now. I don't want to talk to you. Like, this isn't doing it for me. Granted, I had like maybe one or two like really good sessions, but even I think I only did it for like 6 months because I had opened up to her and I had told her, and I guess I just didn't get the response I thought I would. I was looking for like healthy coping mechanisms and like, okay, probe me, like, let's dig. And it was just like, okay, tell me more about that. And I was like, no, you tell me more about what the fuck I'm going through. Help me. Like, damn, I need help. And I kind of felt like I hit a brick wall again. And I was just like, okay, like, fuck this. Maybe just therapy isn't for me. At that time, that's what I believed. I think just experience really continued to bring up a lot for me. So as I continued dating, I realized how unavailable emotionally I was. Like, the only safe space I knew was in here because that was all I had. And I just became this super hyper independent person, and I can't trust nobody. Nobody's got me like I got me. I could not open up to the extent that these people wanted me to open up to. It didn't feel safe.
Yeah, that's a trauma response.
Yeah, and I was just like, wait, like the same thing kind of happening over and over again, and I'm aware. So I was like, okay, like this is this isn't working out. I need to just take a pause from the dating and like just figure me out a little bit. And I took like I took like 2-3 years to like just focus on me, figure me out. And granted, all through this time, like my college career was pretty impactful for me. I studied nutrition and food science, and through that you just kind of learn like these little nuggets of like empowerment of how you can take control of your life. And let me tell you, that gave me so much hope because it was like, okay, like there's a better way. There's a better life out there waiting for you somewhere. You just got to keep going. You just got to keep finding it. There's good people out there. There's ways to heal. There's ways to just feel your best. And I always had that in the back of my mind. I don't know if it was God, if it was my spirit guides, like if it was whatever it was. And, I had pretty impactful mentors along the way, which I'm really, really grateful for. They were my angels, literally. And I just always was like, nah, there's got to be a better way. Like, there's got to be a better life to live. Sadness cannot be all that there is. I craved meaningful relationships. I craved enlightenment. I craved that feeling of empowerment that I got through education and that I got through achieving in my schoolwork. That was also building at the same time, simultaneously, as I was like, okay, I'm not going to date. Need to figure me out. I dove really deep into my education, studied nutrition and food science. I became a personal trainer. I was working at gyms. I worked my way up to be like managing gyms. And because nutrition was my niche, I was always developing nutrition programs, coaching clients one-on-one. And I never expected to go in there feeling healed from the work that I was doing. That saved my life. The work that I do saved my life. It really, really did. Like, I always told one of my mentors, like, there's a part of me that's selfish in the work that I do because it always comes back to me. And when you're helping somebody else, you're helping yourself. When you're helping somebody else heal, you're sharing a space with somebody because you can't help somebody else heal without being vulnerable with them and without sharing your story and without, connecting on that level. And every time I had the honor to do that with other people, I was healing a little more and a little more and a little more and a little more.
I feel so like I'm over here. You guys can't see, but while she's talking, I'm like nodding my head. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because there's so many different forms of healing when it comes to personal development. And you have the permission within yourself to curate your journey to look best for you. It's not always just writing in a journal. It's not always going to a therapist and talking things out. Like you see right here from Evelyn's experience that she found her purpose while still trying to help other people. And that created your business, which we're going to talk about next. But I can relate so much because that's the purpose of this podcast. Like every single time I have a conversation with someone new, or even if I record solo episodes, I know I'm putting the content out for y'all who are listening and watching, but I'm also healing myself by listening to these empowering conversations of all walks of life, people who have gone through such terrible things, but look at them now. So, yes, yes to these spaces. So let's talk about now your meal prep service, which is called EvesEats Meal Prep. So talk about how does it tie into your mission of empowering others to live balanced lives, and how did that get started too?
So along the way, like at these different gyms that I was teaching at, even at when I was in college, like my labs was about cooking. Like I'd be given an assignment like, oh, you have a client who's pre-diabetic. Like, what would be your meal to cook for them? Okay, great. Now go cook 40 meals and you have 3 hours. So it was like muscle memory when it came time to start my business. And granted, little did I know in college that I would be applying all of that in my business today, which I feel super grateful to have had that experience. And then, like at the gyms that I was coaching at, I was always cooking for people. Always. I would host potlucks. I would do webinars, seminars, like in person, virtual. I remember during COVID, like I was going live every day cooking. This was at one of the last gyms I was working at. So I have had just such a wealth of experience when it came to cooking, but not just cooking, cooking to heal, cooking to improve somebody's life, cooking to give somebody sort of hope again, right? Start a new path. You know, these are people that were literally dying that needed to change their diet and health in order to improve and take that next step to living a more joyful, healthy, happy life. And that was really important for me. Like when I was in college, I was at one point going to go the dietitian route, but with that, it's like, and no shade to dietitians. I mean, they put in the work and it's a hard path to take. I realized very soon that I wanted to be more involved. Like, I wanted to be more involved with the community. I didn't want to just see somebody once and not know. Like, that would just bother me. Like, I'd go to sleep and be like, okay, what happened to Nancy? Like, did she get, is she following the plan? So I realized very quickly I wanted to be more involved in the community. I wanted to see the results. I wanted to be involved in the process. And so, you know, being a part of these gyms, all that was giving me that experience. And then at the last gym that I was working at, shout out to Vita Project, I had created a nutrition program there. And again, was always cooking. We would do events. I was the cook. And it's just all these different cool, healthy recipes that nobody would ever know is healthy. And they're like, damn, this is banging. You know, like that was just the thing. Like it was like, okay, it's so good you wouldn't know that it's healthy kind of thing. And that was always my goal, was so that people didn't feel healthy is always boring, because it's not. You just have to get creative. You have to explore. You have to try new things. You have to figure out what works best for you. I always tell people one shoe size doesn't fit all. Like, it's really a journey. It really is. And it really comes down to your relationship with food. And so my program that I had created there was all about that, like healing your relationship to food. One of my clients in that program, he had lupus and he couldn't cook for himself because, you know, like with lupus, your joints get swollen. It's hard for you to kind of do the day-to-day thing. So I was like, all right, don't, like, he was going to quit. And I'm like, no, like, don't quit. I'll cook for you. Don't worry about the money. Like, I'll cook for you. If you like it, we can talk later about, you know, putting a price on it. And that was it. 3 weeks later, he was like, girl, I need this in my life. And I was like, okay, all right. So I started, you know, breaking things. I'm like, okay, this would be the price for this. I mean, I used to do food costs, all this stuff in college. Literally, it came so easy during that time because I already had all of the experience. So I broke everything down. Once the news got around that I was cooking, everybody in my program signed up. At that point, I had worked at plenty of different gyms, plenty of different places where I had built these meaningful connections with people where people truly trusted me in my work. They believed in me. And I had all these people come like, "Oh, you're cooking now. Like they were like, you finally started your service." I was like, "Wow, I didn't know you were all waiting for this." But the light bulb just never went off like until that moment with my client. And I was just like, "You know what? I'll just cook for you." And that's it. I never looked back since.
Yes, I am here for that. I be seeing you on Instagram. You are killing it. I wish I had that cooking bug in me. I don't, but I commend you so much from, again, finding your purpose through this process. Like, that's so beautiful to witness, and you're still helping people. So it's still pouring back into you, which we talked about before. I love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about confidence. And, that's something that I'm sure you struggled with before, and it's something that you help your clients with, especially being a personal trainer and things like that. So, share a little bit about how you were able to personally experience this transformation of building self confidence. And then, part two to that, what is some advice that you would give to someone who's currently struggling in that aspect of their life?
Yeah, it was in the gym. That's where I gained my power. I was like, "Yo, I am that bitch." Every time every workout was done, I was like, "Yes, let's fucking go."
I lift heavy things up and I put them down.
Yes, literally, like, that is where I gained my confidence, really, and it wasn't about how I looked, it was just about how it really made me feel. It made me feel strong, and a lot of my life, I didn't feel that way, and so once I it was like a drug. Once I finally got it, I was like, "Oh, this is it. This is the thing that's gonna pick me back up every time." I fall into that cycle again of either feeling sad or feeling sorry for myself or just not feeling good about myself because it comes and there is nothing you can do and you just got to ride the wave. But sometimes you could just take your ass to the gym and you're going to feel better after that workout and you could shake it off, you sweat it out, like literally energetically, you're moving that energy and you're moving those emotions through your body. Emotions are energy in motion, right? So the more that you can move your body when you're in those times of really deep sad feelings, the best thing to do is move. Even if you just go for a walk, you don't have to go to the gym, even if you just stretch your body, go outside. Just movement in general has been so healing for me. And I really do believe that trauma gets stuck in your body, emotions get stuck in your body, and it creates all these patterns. And movement allowed me to truly feel a release that I always like was yearning for because it was always so heavy on my chest. Like, everything that I was feeling. So I really gained my confidence in the gym. And then, like with eating and, people would think I have a family that's like comes from a health and wellness background. Absolutely not. I have pre-diabetes, I have heart disease, I have cancer, like I have depression, a lot of mental health issues in my family. And there was just that kind of always thought in the back of my head, like, this can't be it. Yes, genetically, I'm predisposed to these things, but your genetics do not determine your future. You can change that. You can rewire your brain. You can heal your insides, and that can all be done through food. So I really look at food as medicine. It's really been a huge healing part of my journey, along with the exercise. So that also, in turn, gave me this self confidence where I was like, oh shit, like I could cook a meal. And when that meal's done, I feel good. I'm like, damn, that meal look good. And then when I eat it, knowing that it's like fueling me and it tastes good and it's good for my body, it's going to feed my soul, it's going to make me feel good. Like, that always made me feel good. Like that truly made me feel confident because I was taking care of me. I was doing something for myself that I was gonna thank myself later for the next day. All of this work that I do, again, like selfishly, there's a big part of that where it's like huge part of my healing journey. And then being able to share that with others just kind of like took it to a whole nother level.
I love that so much. That holistic healing that's very trendy nowadays that people talk about, but you're actually living it and you're helping others do the same. We love that. Okay. Being a survivor of sexual abuse, I would love to know for you, someone listening or watching who is currently going through what you experienced or, has gone through something similar. What is a message that you would want to tell them, being that you survived that yourself?
I'm still talking to my inner child all the time and still just trying to create, safety and reassurance with her. You're not alone is a big one. Reach out to somebody. That could be the first step to really starting your journey. Just somebody seeing you. Like, let someone see you, girl. Let somebody really see you, what you're going through. Find somebody, whether it's a professional, a friend, find your Melissa, because, when somebody can really see that you're in pain and you're in suffering and they love you and they care about you, they're going to try to help you if you allow them to. And I think another big part of that is don't let it eat you up inside. Don't let it consume you. As hard, a lot easier said than done, but there is hope. There is faith, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in spirits, whatever you believe, the universe. Trust that there is something bigger than you and hold on to that. Keep reaching for that. Even in your darkest days, keep reaching for that. Know that there's something bigger out there for you, rooting for you, looking out for you, and I feel like faith and hope, was a huge part of my process, even though in my surroundings, that's not what I saw. But holding on to this idea of, one day, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help people get better. Or, one day I'm not going to feel like this anymore. Or one day, like, I'm going to be able to, I'm going to overcome this. No matter where you're at, always envisioning a better future for yourself, little by little. And that's like a big part of manifestation, right? Like, just sitting down and in by yourself in the quiet, close your eyes, start seeing the future that you want for yourself. Hold on to that, no matter where you're at, because soon enough, you're going to start attracting that. The world will respond to that, and you're going to start attracting that. And little by little, very little, little by little, you will get there.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Like, take this healing personal development journey one day at a time and embrace all the ebbs and flows that come with it, because some days are better than others, right? Some days you feel like the baddest bitch in the world, and other days you can't even get the fuck out of bed. And that is okay too, honoring those moments. But like you said, not staying there for too long, not living in that darkness, because it can get real dark real quick. Like, that's something I've experienced myself. And also, just to reiterate, I love that you brought up Melissa. Shout out to her. That support system, it can save your life, just that one person. So, and if you don't have someone like that in your life, put yourself in spaces, take in content like this that inspires you to be like, you know what? I don't feel so alone because Evelyn went through it and look at her now. So now I want to put myself around people so I can eventually get to that point.
Exactly.
So you talked about your inner child. I want
Yeah,
to know,
my girl.
being the woman that you are today, with everything that you've gone through, good, bad, and ugly, what is one thing that you would tell her?
It gets better. Hang in there. It's going to be okay. I give her a long fucking hug. Like, I literally sometimes just like close my eyes and I think about holding her.
Because that's what she needed, right?
That's what she needed. Like, she just needed to be held. She needed to be told everything was going to be okay. She just needed that somebody to see her and somebody to hold space for her physically and emotionally. Even in my adulthood now, I struggle with feelings of loneliness. And trust me, I'm not lonely. Like, but it's just something really deeply rooted in my brain, to like as a child, when you feel lonely but you have so many people around you, that is like the deepest form of loneliness. Like, that shit runs deep. I know when I'm suffering, like, even with my fiance now, God bless him. Shout out to my fiance, because he calls me out now. He'll be like, okay, you're shutting down. I'm reminding you you're not lonely. Like, you're not in this alone. A lot of my narratives, I'm still working on that narrative that I'm not alone and that I'm not going through this alone and that people can see me. And I have to continue putting myself out there, because that was a big part of how I felt growing up. Even though I had a house full of siblings and people in and out of my house, deep down inside, I was just this lonely little girl. I constantly have to go back to her and just like hold her, tell her it's going to be okay, tell her I respect her, tell her I honor her, how much I adore her. I think I lost a lot of my light as a kid. And I was like just this bright girl, you know? I was super expressive and very loving. And my mom said, like, I was such a great baby, very outgoing. And that was gone pretty quick.
That's so real. I appreciate your vulnerability and your realness, and just it's a lifelong journey, like we say, right? Shout out to your future hubby too. We need those kind of people in our lives, okay? So you have a good support system around you.
I do. I definitely do. And I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful. And the more that I continue opening up about it, the more I feel seen, the more that they can support me, because for a long time, I was just shut down. How can anybody see you when you're just you're not even seeing yourself?
Mm. Put a pin in that. That's gonna be part of the teaser that I release, because come on, come on. That's the truth. Yeah.
So, and that's a big part of it too, right? Like on the flip side, you can't be upset or constant, and this is me talking to me a few years back, like people don't see me, they don't really see me for me, or they don't really hear what I'm saying, and it's like, well, girl, are you allowing them to? What do you expect? You know, and I feel like a lot of us, we have this image of we have to be strong and we just have to, you know, continue bottling shit in and we have to just continue moving forward and being an overachiever. And it's like, but girl, you're struggling. You having a hard fucking time and nobody knows. You can't keep being mad at other people for that.
Somebody needs to hear that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You at one point you have to realize, okay, now what part of my trauma is playing in these relationship dynamics?
Come on. Y'all, if you've been here around for a while, you know that I talk a lot about accountability. We never take responsibility for the shitty things that people did to us. But at some point, you can't just keep using, this is what I've been through and it is what it is, right? Because, like you said before, if you put good energy out into the world, you're going to get that back. On the flip side, if you put shitty energy out into the world, what do you expect to get back in return?
Yeah. You have to be willing to look at yourself and say, okay, what part of my trauma is playing in this right now? Because it is playing. Whether you realize it or not, babe, it's playing. And that's part of why, that's part of the suffering, you know, and it's like really allowing yourself to be seen by yourself, getting to know yourself, getting to know, okay, this is how this has affected me. For me, I shut down. I tell my fiance, that's my toxic trait. I still shut down. I'll be like, I'll leave right now. I'll leave, you know, like that's
I don't
because
need you anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, you're doing it again. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like shit. Okay. Fuck, 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 fuck. Like, let me just I still need to step away for like, I still need 15, 20 minutes to gather my thoughts. But you're right. You're right. That's still me working on my trauma responses. And those are things that we're going to have to, when it's that deep, those are things you have to constantly take a moment to be aware of, because if not, you're always going to think everybody else around you is the problem. And that is just a whole nother level of suffering on a human being. Our trauma is not our fault, but how we respond to it and what we do with it is our responsibility.
Come on. Come on. Another one and another one. She's just dropping so many gems, and I knew this conversation was going to be so good. I want to end it on a positive note. I mean, this whole conversation, even though we talked about a lot of heavy things, it's fueling me and giving me so much empowerment within myself. So I wanted to know, what's the biggest takeaway you want people to have by listening to just a bit of your story? Because I know there's so much more to you, but what would you want them to take away?
Start rebuilding a healthy, positive relationship with yourself, whether that is you journaling, whether that's hitting the gym, whether it's, you know, starting a hobby, cooking, writing, drawing, biking, hiking, whatever it is. Start getting to know yourself again, because the relationship that we built with ourselves in our childhood probably isn't serving us in our lives today. And as you know, we get into our adulthood and we realize how our actions and how our trauma is affecting our reality. When you take the time to get to know yourself again, you can have a new beginning. you can have a fresh start. You can start attracting the things that you want because you're no longer stuck in that old version of yourself. And I think it really starts with rebuilding a healthy relationship with you, getting to know where you fall short, getting to know your trauma responses, getting to know what you really like. We shut these things down to just get by, to just get along. And when you really take that time to get to know yourself again and really love, like really, really love yourself, even the parts that are like, damn, that bitch is crazy. Whatever it is, right? Really taking the time to love all of that and really getting that third eye view of who you are, I think is really the step to anybody's healing journey. And then that naturally will affect your relationships and how you show up in life and how you show up in your work and how you show up for other people and for yourself, of course, mainly. So, really beginning with your relationship to yourself. What does that look like? What does that mean? Start somewhere. Anywhere is a good start. I think starting with that intention will bring you to that vision of hope or faith that you might have once lost for yourself, and realizing your potential, realizing the life that you can have, because you can. You can have it all, babe. You can have it all. You really can. But it does take putting in the work. It does take doing the hard shit. It does take showing up for yourself. It does take having hard conversations. It does take having to look in the mirror. Like, it takes a lot of hard work. I'm not going to lie about that. There's no getting over that. But there is fortune on the other side. There's abundance on the other side. There's empowerment on the other side. And there's people waiting to love you, the real you, on the other side as well.
Come on. I couldn't think of a more beautiful way to end this conversation. I was going to ask you what's your definition of thriving, but I think you completely just summed it up perfectly with that answer. I think you should start a podcast of some sort because
Oh,
listening to you, it's just literally overflowing my cup. Like, I feel so seen, so heard, so understood, even though our stories are very different, but you just have this light and this wholeness about you that, I think so many people are just going to fall in love with and want to be able to work with you and follow you. So please plug in your services, where you're at, anything else you want us to know about.
yes. So we spoke about the meal prep services. I also do personal training one on one. I'm really big on women's wellness. So I talk a lot about like PCOS, nutrition around endometriosis, just people, prediabetes, like a lot of the common things that women struggle with. I try to share as much value on the nutrition coach side. I will be launching nutrition coaching services soon. So stay tuned for that. My Instagram is _it's Eves Eats. And the website is www.eveseats.com, where I also have my blog, and you can look at some of the wealth of knowledge that I share on start taking steps to improving your health and your wellness today.
Yes. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here. I love this connection, and I'm just so excited to continue watching you grow and heal and thrive and continue to show up for yourself. I think it's so beautiful to see what you've dealt with to who you are now. You are empowering so many women and men to own their truth, but know that this is just a little piece of their story and you have the possibility to create the most abundant life that you can despite what your past looked like. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.